Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Mid-Tier Thoughts. It's me, Austin. Today I'm joined by the host of another podcast, Punching Primers Podcast. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, go ahead and check him out. Recently, he had one of our other guests, Tap Rack Tyler, on there. Awesome podcast, awesome show. I'm going to let him go ahead and introduce himself. So go ahead and take it away, man.
All right. My name is Mike. I do the Punching Primers podcast. I've also got a YouTube channel. It's called Sacrificial Science. We do gun reviews, and we've blown up a few guns on there. We do some reloading content. That's about it for me.
Well, I was going to say I've checked out a bunch of your videos after checking out the podcast, and I recently actually just got into reloading myself. Something I've wanted to do for a while, but I lived in an apartment for a long time, and I finally upgraded to a house, so I actually have room to do it. So
nice.
I just got started with something small with like a Lee hand loader. So my grandfather got me a Lee loader set for my birthday, and so I've been cranking away at that. And I was like super nervous, like trying to do this, making sure everything's legit and everything's right. And it's way easier than I thought it was, and it's way more fun than I thought it was.
Oh, it is. It's kind of therapeutic.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was one of those things where I'm just sitting there and I'm cranking away, and I'm like, oh, I'm already done.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just started reloading for my 303 Brit that I have, my Enfield.
Nice.
So that's the one my grandfather happened to have. So he gave that to me, gave me the powder and everything I needed to get started. So it's been cool. It's been kind of cool getting into it, and definitely I've got the bug now. I definitely want to get more stuff and start cranking away on all my other calibers of things that I have. So
awesome. What powder do you use for that?
Whatever he gave me. So I have IMR 4064.
Okay. Originally, that gun, when the British military wanted powder made for that gun specifically, when they went away from the old style powder, they got with DuPont, and they wanted a powder that would fill the case but not leave a bunch of headspace in it. So they came out with a powder called 3031, which stands for 303 #1 powder.
Oh,
and
interesting.
It's made specifically for the 303 British, but I use it for 4570 and a few other guns.
I'll have to look into that for sure. I know, like, whenever we started this, we just cracked open the Lee loader, and he was looking through the list of powders on there. He's like, "Oh, I have some of that." And then that was my birthday present. So that was pretty cool for me
awesome.
to get started into that for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's something, like I said, it's something I've wanted to do for a while, and I know a lot of people who do. I just haven't had the space to do it. Now, finally getting into it, especially with 303 Brit, it's not cheap these days.
Oh no, it's probably $2-3 a round.
It was some of the more expensive stuff. I mean, if you skimp on it, and if you just, so like my infield is an unbutchered like #4 Mark 1. It's a military surplus. It's not a sporterized or anything, and I don't use it to hunt. I use it for LARPing on the range.
Nice.
So I don't really care what goes through it as long as it's non-corrosive. So
yeah, right.
I'll skimp out and buy the cheapest stuff I can get. But even that, I think the cheapest box of 303 I found the other day was like $26.99, and I bought probably 500 rounds of it a couple of years back with some tax return money, and prices have gone way up since then. So he gave me enough stuff to get started on 100 rounds, and so I reloaded 50. And gave it, and after I reloaded the first 50, I was like, I should probably actually shoot one of these to make sure it works.
Yeah, at least check a grouping. Yeah.
Yeah. I was more concerned about making sure like I just did it right. I was like, I should probably do that before I get too carried away here.
Yeah. So were you nervous the first time you shot one?
Oh, 100%. Like,
reloads?
I've done some sketchy stuff when it comes to firearms, but that was probably one of the sketchiest. That
Dude,
was like
it's kind of it's unnerving.
Yeah, you're like, look, I didn't pull this out of a box, which means I did it, and I'm like half retarded. So
yeah.
Speaking of sketchy stuff with guns, so it's funny because like my gun collection, it's part modern sporting rifle, tactical rifle type deal, and then part like I'm a big milsurp nerd. I'm a big history buff, so nice. I've got some random stuff like that. So I'd actually I got a Remington rolling block in 7mm Mauser from a customer at the gun shop I used to work at a long time ago. His grandfather had passed. It was a project gun. It was missing all of the internals, and he just wanted to get rid of it. So he just gave it to me. And I was like, this is awesome. These things are sweet. So I find it. I start looking for the internals, and apparently the only person that still currently makes internal parts for these is a guy in Nevada, and it is send me a check in the mail, paper mail. I will get back to you when I get back to you. He's like 85 years old, and you just got to wait and just hope for the best, hope that time doesn't take him before you get your stuff back. And I did, and I got my stuff, and all in all, it was like $300 for everything, which is a steal of a deal for something like that. And went out and I go to shoot it, and I start reading up on these because 7mm Mauser wasn't standardized as a cartridge till 3 years after these were out of production. Really? So yeah. So they made the rolling block for a long time, and from about right after the Civil War until about 1915. Well, actually, a little earlier than that, about 1910. Is the last model that they made, but they produced them probably a little after that. But they went from black powder to smokeless, and its whole claim to fame is that it was the strongest action at the time, so it could withstand the smokeless to smoking. I mean, the smoking to smokeless powder transition without any really changes. Mm-hmm. So the 7mm Mauser ones, you go through, and I'm like, okay, well, how do I make sure that this is safe to shoot? I don't have a gauge with me, and so I go to the forums, which is a super sketchy place. Yeah. And there's basically two options. One, throw a light load in there, see how the brass reacts. If fire forms the chamber, what's going on, right? The other one, way sketchier, throw the round in the chamber, take a piece of paper, and see how many pieces of paper, right, you can fit between the round and in the rest of the chamber. And I'm like, who's the crackpot that came up with this idea?
Yeah, no joke.
Yeah,
that sounds safe.
So we figure, you know what, go big, go home, right? So I'm up at my grandfather's house. We put it on a sled. We tie a string around the trigger. We open it up, throw in one round of the hottest 7mm load we can find, and fire it like a cannon. Nothing happens. We do 3 more rounds of it. Nothing happens. And then we go up there and we look over at my cousin, and we're like, all right, now you shoot it. Nice. So when he didn't die, we figured, all right, it's pretty safe.
But it's scary when they blow up. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is, like, again, going back to the forums, it's like reading about, like, hey, what happens what are the consequences of this? Of it not being spaced properly. And you'll get about a 50-50 where you get one person being like, it doesn't matter. It's a super strong action. Worst thing that might happen is it'll open the breech a little bit. You'll be fine. The other side is like, you're going to die. It's a hand grenade, and you'll and you're like, I don't even know what to do here.
Yeah, you have now turned this gun into a destructive device.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, this is a one-time use item.
Yeah, I blew up a 7.65 Mauser for a video, geez. And dude, that was the most gruesome one I've done yet. I mean, it was so many parts and pieces just went flying everywhere.
So speaking of that, this is a funny story. I think of back. I used to work at a gun shop, and we would always have people come in with things that needed fixed, but they, people that weren't very smart. And so this one guy, I can't remember what they're called, but they're those semi-auto Remington rifles. I can never remember the model number, but they basically look like an 870, but they're a 30-06. They've got like a 4-round magazine. I think they're like a 783 something like that. Yeah, so he has one of these, right? And he's like, "Hey man, I've got a round stuck in here. Like I've got a bullet stuck in the barrel." And we're like, "Oh, okay, squib load or something?" And he's like, "Well, kinda." Like, what do you mean, kinda? Like, what happened? So this guy proceeds to tell us that he ordered what he thought was surplus 30-06 off of a website.
Dude, was it 8mm Mauser?
No, it was like 7.63 Argentine. And he just said, fuck it, full send. And so this dude's like, if it fits, it ships. It must be the right stuff. That's what they sent me. Loads one in, and whole gun fails. And he's like, I don't understand. So we figure this out. We tell him, like, hey man, like, don't do that. this is a bad idea. And his response, instead of being like, oh yeah, I'll contact them, like get it fixed, he's like, nah, I'll figure it out. I got 100 rounds of it. We'll see what happens.
Wow.
Best of luck to you, bud.
Yeah, I'm running a drill bit down the barrel to open it up a little bit.
Yeah, we're just gonna resize this here. It's that easy, right?
Yeah, we're gonna rame it just a little bit.
Gunsmith.
Yeah, Smith.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there was always the funniest stuff that would come in through there.
I can imagine. I mean, I've been in gun stores before, and I hear just some of the stories I hear, like shopping for a gun. I'm like, why do these people even come in here and work here?
Oh yeah, I mean, you always. Sorry, go ahead.
Is that we were in I think it was a Bass Pro or a Cabela's, one of the two, and the guy behind the counter was telling somebody that you can't shoot a 5.7 at a range because the bullet will go through the backstop and out the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's like 25, grains. That's not going through much.
Like that was the nice thing was like the place I worked at, we didn't have to worry about like commission or anything, so we could be honest with people. So when people would come in and say stuff, like all you need is a shotgun, just that's universal. It's like, all right, dude. Like, let me guess. You're like, I'm gonna take a guess. You're over 60, thus the NRA hat and the Fisher's vest, and your wife is probably packing a hammerless 38 revolver with a pink grip. Am I right?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
It's amazing some of the stuff you hear, like some of the rumors that go down there. And it's one thing where it's like if you just don't know, you're just not in this. Guns just aren't your thing, right? I get that. I'm not huge into cars. If you start talking about, throwing out numbers of sizes of motors, I'm going to nod my head and smile and be like, yeah, that's cool. Because I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm not a car guy. I'm a gun guy, right? So I get that if that's not your thing. But sometimes, man, it's like even when you're sitting there telling people, like one of my favorite ones was this guy comes in and, again, older guy, older wife. I need to get her a pocket 38. Like, okay, well, that is an option. However, we did just get in these Smith & Wesson Easy 380s. They're pretty sweet. They're light on the recoil. I can rack the slide with my pinky. That's too complicated for her, right? And she's standing right there. I'm like, the guy's just basically looking at me, telling me his wife's retarded, and I was just like, I gun out, and I'm like looking at him, looking at her, and I drop the magazine and I rack the slide, and I go, ma'am, do you think you can handle that? And she goes, oh yeah, that looks easy, right? So I show her, and she's like, oh, this is super easy. He's like, no, it's clearly too complicated. So we finally get them to go out onto the range because we had a test fire range. Uh-huh. You could rent guns. So we go out there, and she she goes out there and she's just nailing it. A little bit of instruction, and she is just hitting bullseyes the whole time. And this dude is not hitting the broadside of a barn, and of course, the sights are off. It's shooting low and left. You got to raise the sights up. And he was just so mad that his wife outshot him. It was really funny.
Yeah, women usually are naturally better shooters than men.
Yeah, I do find that a lot of times like that is the case, and that and like newer shooters that don't have bad habits are way easier to teach.
Oh yeah, and plus most guys are like, I know my dad taught me this when I was 4, mm-hmm. So and they stick with that. Where a woman's like, I will take some, they actually listen. Sometimes.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of like defensiveness that comes up there, where people are like, oh no, I know what I'm doing, or like I've got this habit, or like, oh well, this works for me. And it's like, well, that's clearly not the case. That's why you're here. Yeah. So, yeah, interesting times for sure. But I was going to say, one of the things I know we've talked about a lot on the podcast, and I like that you kind of put out there too on one of your videos I was watching the other day. I can't remember the title of it, forgive me, but it was one where basically part of what you were talking about was how like the gun community, it can basically be its own worst enemy, like how incredibly toxic it can be. And that's one of the reasons mainly why we started this podcast in the first place is, the whole idea behind the name of Mid-Tier Thoughts was, me and Mike, my co-host, who unfortunately isn't with us today, he we're two average dudes. We both spend a little bit of time in the Navy. We're big gun guys. We're not like Navy SEALs or nothing. We're not these top tiered, I'm an operator all the time guys, but we're also not, super unknowledgeable. We're somewhere in the middle. That's our whole thing was like,
Yeah.
how do you present this same information, but make it applicable for everyday people? Someone who makes $60,000 a year, has a wife and two kids. How do you reach that guy and have him training? Because it's super easy to go out there and promote all of these different ideas and all these different things you need to be doing and the gear you need to buy and the guns you need to have when you're a former special operator with government contracts and you have $1 billion or $1 million business behind you. That's super easy to tell people what to do all the time because you don't have to worry about the finances, right? But when you're sitting there being like, I would love to have this product, but that chest rig is $400 frickin' dollars. I don't have $400 to throw at a chest rig. How do you reach those people and make sure that they know, like, one, that their voice can be heard, and two, that hey, let's make this applicable realistically for the everyday person.
Oh yeah, because we all start somewhere. I mean, my first AR was crap.
Yeah,
and I've worked my way up.
I started my gun journey as like a super FUD. Like I wasn't fuddy in mindset, but I was fuddy in gun choice. The first gun I ever bought with my own money, I grew up shooting. I was a big pro gun family, but I was 18. I was stationed over in Bremerton, Washington area, and I went down to the Big Five with $200 in my hand and walked out of the store with a Mosin Nagant, a Spam can of ammo, and a little accessory kit that they gave me, and a gun case. And I was stoked. I thought I was,
nice.
Sealy Sightsev. I was going to go hold the enemy off at the gates, And looking back,
now John Wick.
Yeah, exactly. Like looking back on it, like I totally had the mindset of being like, oh, doesn't matter. I'm going to learn to run this thing to where I can compete with everybody else, And then same thing for my pistol, right? The first pistol I buy, same place, still stationed there. I go down to Sportsman's Warehouse, and of all the guns to buy, I leave the store with a 1911 because the internet told me to. It was a Ruger SR 1911. It was the compact size, I guess yeah, is that officer size? Yeah, the 4 1/4 inch barrel.
Commander.
Yeah, commander size, dude. And I was riding that 2 World Wars train hard. And part of that was just like everyone I knew that owned a Glock was kind of a douche. And so I was like, well, I don't want to be like those guys. So, I think it's between that and I would say also my level of knowledge as far as like gun tubing has evolved too, because in the beginning, who I would watch to get decisions from. Over time, I began to one of the ones I listened to a lot of times was Such Double Lot. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's a good dude, but he's never had a negative review in his life.
No, because he gets paid.
Exactly. There's never been a product that he has ever said is a bad idea, regardless of how crappy it is. So that's the thing was it would be more like, I want this gun. I need somebody to justify it for me. I'm going to go watch this shill and listen to him instead of someone who's actually done a positive review, or negative review, and see what the downsides are. So I've since elevated my tastes and graduated out of that school of thought. But it's, we all start somewhere, and we all start with, like you said, we all start somewhere. Like my first AR was gross. And it was.
Did you say on your last podcast you said it was like a Smith & Wesson?
So that one, yes. Okay, so the first one I bought was technically let me back up. My first tactical rifle was a Romanian parts kit AK I'd bought from a buddy of mine that had been built by a monkey. It was garbage, and I had no idea it was garbage because I was like, have AK, will travel. Let's and then I started being like a super big AK bro, and I was just going riding it. And so when I traded that to a dude for a Smith & Wesson. So I did get that one. So that one wasn't bad, but the first one I built was an Anderson lower on a company called Hardened Arms, Hardened Arms Upper. Hardened Arms went out of business like 14 days after I got my upper. And I've never met another person who knew who they were. I don't
Yeah, I've never
remember
heard of
how I
them.
came across them, and I'm pretty sure it's all just UTG. Like it's
Wow.
just like cheap stuff. But that was my first one, and I was so stoked. And I had it was an AR pistol, and I didn't even have like a brace. I just had the tube with the broom handle, like the rubber broom handle cover on the back. You
Oh
know?
yeah, like the door stopper for the or a floor stopper for a bar stool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just had one of those on the back, and I had the highest of Chinese optics. With my multiple
Nice.
reticle and color choices.
Yeah,
Which, for those listening, that is the dead giveaway that you've bought crap.
yeah,
if,
definitely, definitely.
if it changes colors and it has four reticles, probably not great.
Yeah,
Um,
no joke. I've got a fake EOTech because I got a real EOTech and I wanted to
yeah,
see the difference. So I got a fake
yeah,
one and it changes from red to green when you hit the night vision button.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've seen ones where I've seen the ones where it's Trigicon with a J or with a G instead of a J. You know, it's $100 Trigicon, ACOG, and there's just multiple G's in it, and it turns red, green, and blue, and the glass clarity is like as if you're Helen Keller trying to look through
Yeah.
there. Yeah. You can't tell if the cap's on or off.
It's like trying to look through a tail light on a car. It's like, this is
Yeah.
crap.
Yeah, and it's like, but we all start somewhere, right? And that's the biggest thing is like, for me, it's always been a big thing. You get a bunch of people who crap on everybody for like, oh, that gun's a piece of shit or something like that, right? And for me, like, it's one thing that translated over to like being at the gun shop was, you know, it was one of those things that I loved seeing people coming in and buying their first gun and starting that journey. And sometimes, you either don't know or you just don't have the money. Sometimes like people coming in, they'd be like, I have $300. What's the best gun I can buy for $300? And I'd be
Yeah.
like, Taurus G2C. They're not pretty. They ain't going to win a beauty contest. The trigger's ass, but they work. And it's one of the most popular guns we sell because of the price point. And
Oh,
on
yeah, I
our
can see
fire.
that.
Yeah, and on the nice thing about working at a gun shop that had a operating range was you could see when guns would fail and which guns would fail. And I'll give it this: that gun gave a lot of other guns the run for its money, as far as its ability to keep on going and not die. Surprisingly, the downside of that though is Taurus's warranty program is basically gambling. Their warranty program is that they will repair or replace your firearm. Caveat.
Eventually.
Oh yeah, eventually. And caveat, they will replace your firearm, but they never said with the same gun.
Yeah, because
So
everything they make goes out of date in like a year. They stop manufacturing and have another model.
we had a guy who sent off a Taurus Curve in 380 for repair, and he got back a Taurus 38 revolver.
Wow.
And so this was like new to me working at that shop. And I was like, hey, I think Taurus screwed up. And my boss was like, no, man, that's how Taurus does it. That's his warranty program. Tell him to read his warranty. That's what it says. It's their warranty is literally, we will fix it or replace it, but we never said with the same gun. So like the running joke was that guns that come in for repair just go into a bin, and it's just like a grab bag, You never know what you're gonna get.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I had no idea.
yeah, it's wild, but that's the thing is, like we said, everyone starts somewhere. And if you're a dick to people when they start, they're not going to want to do this. They're not want to go on and get better. Like if
No,
you
we
come
need to be
in,
more supportive, man. We got to,
absolutely.
lift each other up because we all start somewhere. And if you got even dumb questions, they're not dumb if you don't know.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And that's the thing is sometimes people just don't know. They're not raised in that environment. It's not what they're used to. Not everyone is, shooting pop cans out of Papa's house, from age 3. Some people never see a gun until they get put in the right circumstance or, something happens. I mean, prime example, when COVID hit, I know you guys talked about that with Tap Rack Tyler, that when COVID hit, that like a lot of people kind of pulled their head out of their ass and were like, hey, having a gun might not be a bad idea. And I know on our end, working in the industry, like so at the time, so that gun shop is in Washington. And at the time, they just passed a thing called 1639. So 1639 basically made it to where semi-automatic rifles were assault weapons. They instituted a wait time, and the only thing you could leave the same day with was a rifle that was not semi-auto, a shotgun of any type, including semi-auto, weirdly enough, and parts kits. So like you could buy a lower and an upper, no problem, right? Which is the weirdest part of that. Yeah, which is super asinine stuff. But we sold everything that you could leave the same day with. We sold in like leading up to the initial like we're going to shut down for 2 weeks for COVID. The day before shutdown, we had sold everything. Like one of the last guns we sold a long-barreled 12-gauge to it was a Browning A5, the competition model with I think a 28-inch barrel, and we sold that, and it was like a $2,900 shotgun. We sold that in one box of birdshot because that was the last of each that we had. And it was a dude who was like, he's like, I don't care, I'll take it. Like the zombies could be coming kind of thing. Like, this could all be over in 2 weeks. And it's like, the thing about it too was in Washington at the time, 1639 had gone through a pretty controversial phase because it had been voted down at the state legislature because of public action against it. And they did some pretty sketchy stuff to get it put onto the ballot. And there were some ongoing court cases against it, but eventually got put on the ballot and as a voters initiative, which passed. And I know that's one thing you guys talked about before in the other episode was kind of some of the gun law stuff. But the thing that got me with this was it was a voters initiative, and it wasn't nothing in like the little blurb that so in Washington, I don't know how it is in other states, like in Washington, when you voted, they do mail-in voting. So they'll send you a little pamphlet of all of the initiatives and everything, and they'll have like usually a little paragraph, right? And then you can flip to the back of the book and read the whole thing in its entirety. So the little paragraph was titled the Safer Schools, Safer Communities Act, and basically said that we'll allow Washington State to add a wait time to certain firearms purchases and a tax on them that would allow money to go towards. Oh, hold on one second.
Sorry.
The what? For what? I don't know where it is. That is. Go. You're gonna go see if you're got one in the other room. Sorry, that was my kid.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. So yeah, basically what it did is it said like all the money that was going to be bought in from this tax, it was going to go towards making our schools more secure and making our communities more secure from gun violence, right? So everyone was just like, oh, sign me up, sign it, right? No one read it. They just thought safer schools, safer communities, who doesn't want that? Well, what they didn't realize because I'd have people come in the next day and be like, the day after it went into effect, and be, oh, that was the other thing too, is it raised the age of ownership of a assault weapon to 21. So someone who on June 30th could buy an AR-15 could not buy one July 1st. You'd have a 18-year-old June 30th could come in and buy an AR-15 all day long. But if it came in July 1st, all of a sudden that's too dangerous. And you would have people come in. Yeah, and you'd have people come in and they'd be like, oh, that's what that was? Like, yeah, like, oh shit, I voted for that. And you're like, oh well, you're an idiot. And this continuously happen, or and the thing I think that's big in the gun community that I see is this kind of like, well, I don't care what laws they pass, I'm going to do my thing, which I understand that mentality and I support that mentality, but at the same time being like, I don't think you can be entirely inactive from politics as a gun guy.
No, not at all.
And I think there's too much apathy. I know I had an issue with I lived in Washington at the time that this was going on. I live in Idaho now, and I had a real big issue with one of the guys that was a pretty prominent Washington Instagram, micro niche celebrity type guy.
Hmm.
Because his mentality on the whole thing at the time was, screw it, don't care. I'll just do what I want. Like, well, that's great, man. But what about the rest of us? What about your kids?
Yeah,
That because
what are
that
they
was
going to buy?
yeah, that was my biggest thing was like I have kids, and if I can't even get off my ass to turn in a mail-in voter pamphlet, I didn't have to leave my house, right? But I can't get off my ass to fill one of those out to try to preserve my rights. And you expect me to believe that if I can't do that, that I'll like go gather with the guys on Lexington Green and tell the redcoats to turn away? I can't even sign a piece of paper.
Yeah, you got to be a little more active than that.
Yeah, that's my thing. Is like I think there's so much apathy in the gun industry, in the gun community, that I think is the issue. Like I understand the mentality that people have, like we can't vote our way out of this. Like I get where they're coming from, but it's like
Hmm.
you can make sure we don't vote our way into it too.
Yeah, we got to think
Yeah.
of our kids because I have three sons. My wife has a daughter, and we got a granddaughter now. But two of my sons are over 18. One just turned 18, and he can't buy anything here in Ohio until he's 21. If he buys it, I think he could buy an AR here, but he's got to at least wait 14 days.
Wow. Yeah. And
Yeah, but I mean, I,
that sucks.
yeah, the laws we're passing now are affecting our children, and people don't realize that.
Yeah, and that's the thing where it's like the biggest thing that would always piss me off is you get like especially some older folks that would be like, well, good thing I got my stuff when I did. And it's like, well, that's great, dude. But like what about your grandchildren? What about preserving the liberty of future generations? You're
Mhm.
sitting here and being like, oh, mine is good to go, or well, I'm willing to go fight for it. And it's like, dude, you won't even go down to the voting office. You expect me to believe you're gonna go take off the woods and red dawn the shit? You
No,
know,
that ain't
you,
happening.
you yeah, it's like you won't do anything when it costs you nothing. You expect me to believe you're going to go do something when it costs you everything? And then the same people sit around and go, man, how did things get so bad? How did we get to where we are today? And it's like, take a look, man. The other thing too, I think, is a little bit of like defeatism. I know you and I were kind of talking about this offline that um, in Washington State, for example, uh, there's basically 5 counties that control the state. If you look at the map of Washington State on the west coast, it kind of looks like a fish hook, right? And
Yeah.
basically, the coastal counties on either side of Seattle, they're pretty blue, and then the rest of the state's pretty red, with the Spokane being the next largest city on the east side, about 20 minutes from Idaho, is kind of purple because it's a college town.
Mhm.
And the thing is, everyone just has this mindset that it doesn't matter how we vote because Seattle runs the state. Um, but my old boss was pretty involved in the Washington State political scene when it comes to guns, and they would run the numbers every election, and they would find out that every time these anti-gun stuff passed in our county, for example, there was a 35% voter turnout.
Wow.
35%, not 35% like Republican or Democrat, like total. And it's like, man, if we would just get off our ass and stop thinking that like we don't have a say, we could actually do something. We could actually stop something from happening, or maybe even get rights back.
Yeah,
But
which
we
is extremely hard.
yeah, and absolutely. And it's way harder to get something back once you've lost it. But it's we sit there and we say like, oh man, they can't, that, and like the argument when people like they can't do that, that's against the Constitution. Do you think they give a shit?
No, they
Like,
don't care at all.
yeah, it's like they're the ones putting this up in the first place. You think they don't know that? And you think
Mhm.
someone's going to sit there and be, I was like, every time someone's like, well, they can't do that, it's against the Constitution. It's like, look at California.
Oh, I know
You
you
know,
can't have. I mean, the things they have to go through to have to even have an AR there is just ridiculous. Because Tyler was going through it on the podcast I did with him,
yeah,
and I mean, I understand why they do what they do, and a lot of people are saying, don't comply. But when you have a platform like YouTube where he's putting videos out, he has to comply because if not, they know he's not doing it.
yeah. I think that's a good thing to talk about too. I know that was one of the things we went through a lot at the gun shop that I worked at was a lot of people will be like, well, why don't you guys just not comply? Because like one of the things that passed recently in Washington was a 10-round magazine capacity ban. So the
Oh,
way
that
the ban
sucks.
is worded, yeah, it sucks, dude. But the way it was worded was, you can keep what you got, you just can't buy more. So and then they also passed through a Washington state assault weapons ban. So that also was, you could keep what you got, but you can't buy more. So that with it too, I know like on one of your videos you talked about like they're trying to ban them, go buy more of them, which is exactly what we saw in the
Yeah.
gun industry here. But the big thing was the way that they worded it is that over the last three anti-gun laws, they have had three different definitions of assault weapons.
Yeah.
So, and we all said, look, there is not an official definition yet. This is a wide stepping stone here because the initial one with 1639, like I was talking about, that made it harder to buy, semi-autos, and it instituted a wait period. Oh, that was the other thing that it did. You had to take a class to get a certificate to prove that you'd gone through a safety course, but the safety course that they had was literally like a 30-second click through PowerPoint. So you didn't actually learn anything. And basically all it told you was the treat never keep. So your four safety rules and don't kill yourself with a firearm. That was it. But that initially, the initial definition of assault weapon was not 22s, and it had to be a rifle that was semi-auto. Then it changed with the next one, and it came in. It was like, well, now the assault weapons ban is not just going to come after those. It's going to come after every semi-automatic rifle and every semi-automatic shotgun and any parts that can be made into assemble into one. So no lowers and upper combos, nothing. And so it's funny because I wasn't the only one that moved to Idaho shortly thereafter. That was just part of it that spurred it. But moving to Idaho,
Mm-hmm.
an incredibly free state, everything is legal. I mean, I got a buddy of mine who just got his
Yeah.
paperwork back on his full auto lower, and he's got a belt fed upper, and he's got one of those Fight
Nice.
Light belt fed uppers. Oh, dude, the thing is sick. It's awesome. But he just got a
Yeah, I've
couple
seen
stamps
those.
back.
They're expensive.
Yeah, he's got some money for it stashed away, so he's good with money. But he's got some cool stuff. We were joking around more about like he's got an older son that shoots with him. We're like, good thing you got a kid, so that way he can pick up all the links from your belted ammo, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so funny, like the contrast that how much difference 20 miles makes. Like where I lived in Spokane, it was a 20-minute drive to the Idaho border, and where I live now, it's about 15 minutes from the Idaho border with Washington. And so I didn't
That
move
is.
very far, and it's so funny like how much that little line changes everything.
Oh yeah, that invisible line.
Yeah, it's an arbitrary thing where I could ride around with my AR-15 in my vehicle, and on one side of the state line, it is totally fine and I am not a danger to anybody. And I cross the state line, and all of a sudden I am a dangerous threat to society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how it is here too. Because we live like I think we're maybe 20 minutes from, or I don't think it's that far. Maybe 15 minutes from Indiana and like 10 minutes from Michigan. And before we had CCWs, and like, well, we got our CCWs now. We've had them for a while, but Ohio now has constitutional carry. But somebody can
Yeah.
carry in Ohio, but not go into Michigan with it. And it just, to me, it's kind of like, the same. It'll be the exact same city, the exact same block, but one side is Ohio, one side is Michigan. It just, to me, makes no sense.
Well, and that's the thing that gets me is so kind of the geography of the area where I'm at. You have Spokane, which is a city of the greater Spokane area is probably half to three-quarter of a million people. And where I'm at in the Coeur d'Alene area of Idaho, the whole county is probably 150,000, so we're all spread out in little communities
Mm-hmm.
all over. So a lot of people will live in Idaho but work in Washington because Washington's pays a lot higher because their minimum wage is higher. And so a lot of people will just cross over for work and come back. And I'm like, you can't tell me that, you know, people are just driving to the border and ditching their guns. Like I know everyone's bringing stuff in there, but like the idea that someone would think that someone in Olympia over on the west side of Washington has this idea that like I can be in Coeur d'Alene, 20 minutes from the Washington border and be totally fine. I could drive to work, and all of a sudden, the gun that I had with me, which Idaho says is fine, I cross that border, and all of a sudden, I've broken 3 laws. You
Yeah, you're
know,
now a felon.
yeah. Now I because you don't have constitution carry, I need a carry license in your state. Then my gun has to have a 10-round mag. Then I have to have all these different like restrictions and things on this, and it just becomes such a hassle. And it's sad to see how things can change like that because Washington, Washington was always like kind of a politically divided state in the first place, where you had a pretty liberal left and a conservative everywhere, liberal left on the west side of the state, and everywhere else was pretty conservative.
Mm-hmm.
But and gun laws were pretty good. Like it was a pretty decent place to be for a long time. We didn't really have any restrictions, and then just over time, chipping away at it piece by piece, and then until they got everything.
Yeah, that's the way the laws always seem to work. It seems like they take a little bit here and a little bit here and a little bit here, but every time they take something, they just feel the need to take one more thing. And there's never going to be an end until we don't have anything at all.
Right. And that's the thing I think is the biggest part for me is I feel like you have to fight it every step of the way in
Mm-hmm.
the sense that I think if one of the things I've said for a long time that's always going to bother me is, and I know I'm guilty of it too, but the idea that people have like, oh, well, that's that state's problem, or, oh, that's what you get for living in California, and it's like
No,
if the entire United States, like as a gun community as a whole got together collectively and was like, we are not going to let this happen no matter what state it's at.
mm-hmm.
We could shut this shit down.
Dude,
If
this
people,
country was made on defiance, and people now are just too afraid to be defiant.
absolutely. I mean, well, that or like they just don't see it as their problem. Like, for example, I move across to Idaho, but I'm still concerned about what happens in other places. It's not like I just moved here and was like, I'm in the promised land, time to not give a shit. Because my thing is, if we always treat it as, oh, well, that's California's problem, oh, that's Ohio's problem, oh, that's Washington's problem, Washington needs to fight that, not us, well, then all the anti-gun crowd is going to do is, I think that realistically the anti-gun crowd knows that the possibility of a federal firearms ban is, especially in today's day and age, is almost impossible to get that many states to agree to something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have to do that though if they just go state by state. It may take them 50 years, but all they have to do is go state by state. They've already got the entirety of the West Coast. California, Washington, and Oregon now almost have have almost identical laws across the board. Mm-hmm. So the West Coast is on lock. So everyone who moved to Idaho like I did, who thinks like, oh, I'm free now, I'm good. Like we need to be even more vigilant because
because they're moving east.
Yeah, all the money that was left there on the table, they don't need to pump it back into Washington. They already got it. Even if, and now, well, Washington's going through multiple court cases over all of those laws I talked about. And the thing I always tell people is like when they're like, oh, well, we'll challenge it in court. We'll get it in court. We'll win in court. Like, great, 10 years later. Ask the Californians how that worked out for them with their mag ban.
Yep.
They're still dealing with that. It's gone back and forth. It had how many stays in the last couple of years alone? And it's like how many?
Have it for like one day, and then it gets, the next day it's overthrown.
Yeah, funny enough, when the Freedom Week happened, the first time with Judge Benitez, when they had like a week of being able to buy magazines, I had people calling my shop up in Spokane because the thing was they gave them till Friday at 5 o'clock, and I had a dude call me. I'll never forget this. It was Friday at 4:45, and he said, "I have $1,200. How many Magpul AR that by me?" And I said, I will just put it in. I'll start adding them up until it hits 1,200 and send it. And he's like, sick, thank you. And that was it. Awesome. He was just trying to get whatever he could. And that's my thing is if we treat each thing as individually, like I understand, like I can't make the voting decisions for Washington. I live in Idaho now, but I can help support the people who do. I can help support whatever cause is I can do what I can to make sure that outrage is felt. Because I look at it in the same way to where if people on the anti-gun side can go to all of these rallies and all these different things and go everywhere else and push all of their effort from outside places to pass a law in one state, why can't we?
Because if gun owners were to all if we get together and we're in a large group, it's going to hit the liberal side of the media to where we're doing some January 6th shit.
Yeah,
that's exactly how it's
true.
going to go.
You know, that's why I think another big thing too is I used to go to a lot of pro-gun rallies when I was younger. But one of the things that kind of turned me off to it was I would go to these, and I don't have any problem with people wanting to wear their gear and their kit and everything. But a lot of people would show up to those rallies in full kit to make a statement, you know? And it's like I get where they're coming from, but my thing is like everything's about how you're perceived and it's all about optics.
Yep.
And if you're going to try to win hearts and minds, that's not the way to do it. If you're going to try to get people in the middle, that's not the way to do it. Because people, when they see that, all you're doing is proving the stereotype true.
Yeah, like if I was to go to something like that, dude, I'm wearing a Hillary 2016 shirt. I'm going to be as gray as possible.
Right. You know, well, that's the thing is it's like, I think it's the thing too is like I get real tired of seeing these. I got real tired of going to those things, and you'd have someone would approach, right, and they would seem like they're genuinely like they're on the other side of things, but they want to understand where you're coming from, right? And you would just get some dude who's like, "You goddamn hippie faggot liberals," and it would be like, dude, like I get you're upset and everything, man, but like that ain't gonna make them be like, you know what, you're right, I am a pussy. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
No one's gonna be sitting there.
God, I mean, I just whiny liberals. They just get on my nerves.
Absolutely.
Blue-haired people. It's like, oh my God, just
sure.
Shut up.
It's like we all get upset at that for sure, but it's like if someone's trying to have a conversation with you and you just go off like that, like, well, that's the end of that. You know what I mean?
You gotta have middle ground. Like when somebody comes at me and says, okay, you're wrong, let me tell you why. It's like, all right, you've already lost me. We're done.
Right. No, I think that's the thing. Is I think as a whole, as gun guys across the board, I think there's like, you don't have to get sucked into the politics, but at least have an idea of what the hell's going on around you. Because the other side of that too is for the people that don't have any idea what's going on and they're just like, I stay out of politics. They're the same people who would come into the gun shop 2 years after 1639 went through and be like, what do you mean I can't leave today with an AR?
Yeah.
I'm like, where the fuck have you been? Where were you?
You got to be somewhat political because it seems like the laws are changing and the rules. It's not even laws. The rules are changing from like week to week. I mean, look at the pistol brace ban. It just got
right.
I'm not sure if it's overturned or if it's an injunction right now.
So, to my understanding, it's a nationwide injunction, and that the way it was described to me was that because of the way that the Fifth Circuit Court worded it, that when it goes up for legal review again, it would be very hard. Like basically, like they're not going to reverse their decision, if that makes sense. Like they're the ones that said they're going to give the injunction to everybody, and basically the way they worded it was like, this is stupid in the first place. So the same people who gave the injunction will be the people reviewing it again. So it would be like the way it was described was if they already gave us the freedom now, like why would they take it later?
Yeah, because like I read that. I was at work when I read it, and so another guy I worked with, I was talking to him about it. He said, so you put your pistol brace back on. I'm like, what do you mean put it back on? It's in the trunk of the car right now.
Yeah. See, that's the other thing, man, that gets me is like the same people who will say don't comply are the same ones who are like, yeah, so I was going to get an SBR anyway. So free tax stamp, dude. Which, hey, anyone listening, if you tax stamped your stuff, you're gay.
Yeah, totally.
That was my thing was like, I mean, it's like people do this, right? And I think the big thing is they get scared, right? Obviously there's the fear there, like, oh no, what if the ATF comes to my door and checks my safe and they find a pistol brace? It's like, bro, why are you
what did you do for them to come in your house?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and I understand some people make the counter argument about like the FRTs, but it's like your name was on a customer list of something you bought. Like no one has a customer list of how many braces were sold,
Oh no, there's
and
millions of them.
yeah, so we did the math the other day, and we were like, if they had as many agents as there were in the ATF, and they spent time to collect 30 people a day, every day, it was going to be like 4 years worth of arresting people every single day, to where that had to be their sole duty, would be hunting down braces, you know? And it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, just be smart, man. Like that's the biggest thing with like all of this gun stuff, like anything gun related, where it's just like use your head and be smart.
Mhm.
If you there's I'm not advocating anything for legal reasons, but if you're going to do something, shut up about
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Don't tell everybody.
Yeah, like you see those stories every now and then about like guys in Germany where they're like renovating grandpa's house, and they're like, oh, we found a Panzer tank, in the
Yeah, no joke.
basement, and you're like, yeah, that's how you should handle gun stuff. Just shut the fuck up about it.
It's like, yeah, we found a full auto Tommy gun. Let's turn it in. Like, no, how
Yeah,
about you just go out and shoot it and then put it back in
yeah.
the safe?
Every time I read those stories, I'm like, I was like, you were the worst grandchildren.
It'd be like someone I found $1 million. Let me find out whose it is.
Well, that's like every time you hear about those gun buybacks, you get both sides. You get the one guy who like basically puts pipe on a stick, is like shotgun, right? And goes and gets all this free
Okay.
money. And then you've got the other side where you get the dude who's like, this is my grandfather's war trophy.
Yeah. Okay. I got something I want to do on that. Occasionally they have buybacks in Toledo, and I've blown up like 5 or 6 guns, and I mean, there's no way they'll ever fire again. But they take them any condition. So I thought about making a video selling those for whatever they got, and then going and buying a new gun with that money, just because it'll
You
be a
should, man.
great
You should.
video.
I love seeing that stuff where, you got the guy who basically makes like a pipe shotgun, with two
Mhm.
pieces of pipe and a stick of wood or something. And, he goes down and does, or there was one where I think it was like Kansas or Kentucky, something like that. They did a bullet buyback, and it was like,
Wow.
yeah, it was something. I think they did a bullet buyback, and whoever did it like had no idea how much ammunition cost, because they did a dollar. They said $1 per bullet, and I was sitting there and I was like, dude, I'm about to empty Cabela's supply of 22.
No joke.
I'm about to go in massive debt and get out of it real quick. An Amazon
Mhm.
gift card.
Yeah, this could be a little bit of it's gonna be some sweat equity, but it's gonna be worth it.
Yeah, I was sitting there. I was like, man, if you walked in with one box of 22, a 50 round box, you get your $50. You go out, you buy 8 more boxes of 22.
Wow.
This is like one of those algebra math problems where you're like, so 4 trips later, I paid off my house.
Yeah, so if Billy had 5 boxes of bullets, yeah,
Right.
that's pretty awesome.
So how are the gun laws out there in Ohio? Like I know you guys said constitutional carry. I feel like Ohio is always one of those swing states. At least they always say that, around election time.
Mhm.
So I never really can never really put a pin on it. Like how do you?
Our gun laws are really lax. We can
Okay,
basically, like if you have a CCW, you can walk into a gun store. A lot of gun stores, like your chain stores, they still do a background check. But I can just fill out the 4473 and walk out with a gun.
okay, yeah, yeah. In Idaho here, it's basically same thing. If you have a concealed carry, you can just walk right out.
Yeah.
You still fill out the form out, but they don't have to go do the next check. So cool, that's awesome. Like, how would you say like your experience with the gun community in your area has been like?
The majority of the people that I know that have guns are more into shotguns and
Mm,
like bolt action rifles.
yeah,
So
more funny.
it's yeah, kind of. But I mean, I got a lot of friends that have some nice stuff, but they won't put
Hmm.
optics on them, and it's like you got that nice AR with no sights. I mean, you got sights on it, but no optics. That would drive me nuts.
Yeah, that's one thing I've never understood. Is like the idea that like you spend all this money on this awesome platform to be able to increase your ability, and then you're limiting yourself by how far you can see.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's like I got
Yeah,
a M1 Garand, and I would love to put a sight on it, but I don't want to ruin a M1 Garand to do it.
Oh, I totally understand like that kind of mentality for sure, like
Yeah.
preserving history type of stuff. But for me, it's like I always saw that a lot at the gun shop, where you either the running joke that you get someone who buys a $2,000 rifle and a $20 optic, and then they wonder why they can't hit anything.
Yeah. It won't hold zero for some reason.
Or you get, I'm pretty sure I've told this story before on my podcast, but I like telling it. You get the guy that comes in, and I had a guy come in one time, and he had an M1A, so the civilian M14,
Yeah.
and he had one of those up and over the mounts that comes up over the action.
Yeah.
It's not like a forward scout mount, but up and over. And then on top of it, he had an ACOG, a 6-power ACOG, or yeah, the bigger one, yeah. And this thing is like 6 inches height over bore. And the guy's like, I don't understand. I'm out at the range and I'm dead on with irons at 100. And then I shoot through this thing and I'm like way off. I don't get it. I don't understand. I just cannot adjust this thing to hit the target. I'm like, no shit. And he's like, I don't understand. So I try to explain it. Like, this guy could not grasp the concept of height over bore. He's like, I'm looking at it. Why is it not hitting it?
Yeah, it's like you stand behind the gun, it's looking good. But have you looked at this gun from the side?
Yeah. Well, it's like I had to draw a circle on a piece of paper and be like, okay, cool. Look, check this out. This is where your barrel's at. Let me lift it up until you see it. See the difference here?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's interesting. And I think that's the thing too, is like, how we're kind of talking about how we all start somewhere. With guns, I think a lot of us kind of start with sometimes like that, like the more shotgun rifle and hunting rifle type side, because that's kind of how we grow up. And I think sometimes some people just like they don't evolve at the same rate with that, or they just stop at certain levels. And for me, it was always like, how do I get better? What do I need for what I want? And like what I always wanted was more geared towards home defense, survival aspect, more the modern Minuteman type of deal. And with that, it was like, okay, so I understand the mentality of whatever weapon you have, whatever it is, master it, right? You might not have a tricked out AR yet. Maybe all you have is M1 Garand, right? Run that M1 Garand like a motherfucker. Like, be the baddest motherfucker on the planet with an M1 Garand. And if all you've got's a hunting rifle, dude, be the best dude on the rifle with hunting rifle. I mean, that's what they had in Red Dawn, man. That's how they started. Hunting rifles and shotguns.
Yeah, the gun you have is better than the one you don't. I mean, it's
right.
Use what you have.
But also don't let that too become like your crutch to not get better and to not seek better stuff, depending on what it is that you're looking for, because there's nothing wrong with just being a casual gun owner. Like I said, my stuff is more geared towards the more tactical side of things like that. And that's kind of where my mindset's at. And, but, I understand not everybody's there. Not everybody needs to be, not everybody wants to be, no. I think in my mind, I'm like, it'd be cool if everybody was, but that's just cause it's me. And I'm sure there's other dudes out there that be like, dude, it'd be super cool if everyone was into like ultralight, super deep backcountry elk hunting, but I'm not,
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing too, is like understanding that just because someone has a difference of opinion and like how they do their gun stuff doesn't necessarily make them wrong.
No, we can all learn something from each other.
Yeah, they just have a difference of priorities and a difference of things that they like, like that. There's probably someone out there that's like a super big car guy that is like, man, I don't understand why this guy doesn't like cars,
Yeah, it's just like, I don't like sports. I could care less about sports. And people come at me like, hey, man, did you see the game last night? And I'm like, I didn't watch it. Then they proceed to tell me every play of the game. And I'm like, dude, I really don't care.
This is going to sound kind of cringy, but like me and my buddies, we always joke around that like we don't really follow sports, but like we follow blood sport in the sense that we just watch like a bunch of like combat footage all the time. They were like, oh man, did you watch the game last night? But like, no, but did you watch this video about these dudes getting hit with an A10? It's freaking sick,
Yeah, watch this.
Yeah,
you can see his head explode from a mile away.
Yeah, watching all the live leak videos.
Oh yeah, that's a rabbit hole you can go down into and not sleep for a week.
Oh yeah, dude, that's one of those things. How that's how you can gauge one of those things, like how old somebody is as well, what they remember from live leak.
Yeah. I remember all the cartel beheadings and stuff.
Yeah, that, and then I remember just watching all like combat footage from Iraq and stuff like that, like, and just seeing like there's some of them, man, like you're watching it at a safe computer thousands of miles away, and you start puckering, and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, how bad was it to be there?
Like there was one I remember seeing. It was somewhere in Syria, during the Syrian civil war. This dude like pops his head around the corner, and you can hear the cameraman, like they're not speaking English, but you can tell like his voice is basically the equivalent of like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, because they see like this Russian made tank just slowly start turning the barrel towards the wall. And then the next second later, like the wall just explodes and the guy's gone, and you're like, oh my god.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that one where the guy sticks his head up over the wall and just, I mean, I don't know if it's an RPG or what, but it just removes his head.
Yeah, it's wild, man.
Yeah, like it blew everything up, 30 feet behind him, but his head was gone. He just,
Yeah, yeah. You see that I don't know. For me, I'm sick and twisted that way. That's just where that's where I find entertainment.
I try to desensitize myself to that just in case it does get bad here. I'm not going to see something like that and just be like, oh my God, and just freak out for 10 minutes, locked on fixated on what just happened.
I do think that is something that's funny about the United States too. Is I think like it's funny looking at us historically. For a long time, it's only very recent in American history that like violent death is not a part of every person's everyday life.
Yeah.
And it's a fairly recent post World War II phenomenon. And I think a lot of times, like, we forget how crap the world can be.
Mm-hmm.
And we forget how bad things can really be out there. I mean, not to get political one way or the other, but with like recent events in the Middle East, right? With people jumping onto the bandwagon of one side or the other, right? With either Israel or Palestine or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And people talk about war crimes one side or the other. And it's like, did you guys forget that we bombed Dresden off the map? Like, we dropped the sun on Japan twice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a certain point where people forget that, like, the world is not a nice place.
No,
it's
not.
This whole idea that, like, especially when it comes to, like, combat or gunfights or anything violence related with firearms, that, there's just going to be only good guys and bad guys and no one in the middle is going to get hurt. That's never the case.
Yeah, like look at even work conditions in other countries. Like in India, like somebody dies in a plant, they're like, all right, sweep them up, keep going. Here it's, we have OSHA and all kind of rules in place where people are just disposable.
Yeah, I had a deployment where we were based out of Bahrain and went a few other places from there. But it's funny, like being in Bahrain, for example, it's an incredibly wealthy country. It's an oil-rich nation. It's an island just off the coast of Saudi Arabia. It's incredibly rich. And you would walk by and see this weird dichotomy there, where you would see 5-star hotels being built by barefoot people on bamboo scaffolding with no safety whatsoever. Hauling 50-pound bags of cement on their backs, and you're like, how is what?
Yeah.
And you really start to see, like, when you go other places and things like that, you see like how bad it is. And I think that's the thing, is part of the reason why I'm such a big advocate for people to get out there and get armed, get trained, and preparedness. Like, not because it's more than just firearms. It's firearms are a part of the equation in my eyes. I think like that's a big part of the equation, but
Mm-hmm.
you can't eat a bullet. You can't drink a bullet unless you're Kurt Cobain.
No,
you can't.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you have to be prepared. I mean, people that say that they'll just take everybody else's stuff, you're the first person that's going to get capped.
Yeah, see, that's one of the things I talk about all the time, is like this whole mentality. I think it really got real big during like the Doomsday Preppers era, because you watch those TV shows and everyone on there is like, someone comes up on my porch for a can of beans, they're getting the double odd buck.
Yeah.
And it's like, way to piss off everyone around you. Like, I understand there's a certain point of being like, I have my food, I have to take care of my family first.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same point, like, if you smoke everyone that comes to your door, there's eventually going to be more people coming to your door than you could smoke that have justifiable anger.
Yeah. Your yard is going to start to stink.
Yeah, and I've always looked at it for like, if you can be prepared to take care of yourself and have to a point to where you're like, okay, I have food for me and my family, but you know what, the family next door, like, they're my neighbors. You know, like the people act like there's going to be like day one, they're just going to go primal and be like, fuck them. You know, like, dude, you've gone to your neighbor's kids' t-ball games, and they've had co-birthdays for like the last 4 years. Like, you're not just going to turn feral day one and tell the guy to die. You
Yeah,
know,
your
like, oh,
power flashes, you start shooting people.
yeah, you're not going to be like, oh, you should have been prepared, Steve. You know, like that's still a guy that you have that relationship with. And I always talk
Yeah.
about this, like, food is a weapon in the sense of, like, you can use it as a tool and as a weapon, because you can use it as a tool in the sense of being like, hey, I could buy some goodwill with my neighbors. You know, if it's a scenario where we're getting down to that, where my survival stash of food is having to be used, I could buy some goodwill with my neighbors that were less prepared and come across like a helping person.
Yeah.
Yet do you run the risk of them potentially like coming back over for more? Sure. But you also, have the possibility of them becoming like, oh, hey, like, you helped me out when this happened, so I'm going to help you out when you need my help, kind of thing.
Yeah. I like your property. Thanks for the rice.
Yeah, or like, hey, I need something done. I don't know how to do it. You do. You don't have food. I do. Guess what? Goods and services. Like,
barter system.
Here we go. Exactly. So I think that's a huge part of it. I think also, if you carry a gun and you're prepared to put holes in people, you should know how to plug those holes. If you're prepared to make somebody bleed, you should know how to stop somebody from bleeding. Because and like, even if I've talked about this before too. Like, you are way more likely to use medical gear than you are your firearm. You can go your whole life without ever actually drawing down on somebody, but you will probably wind up using some medical kit from your first aid kit more than once before you die.
Oh, definitely. I mean, even a cut or a sprain or anything, you're more likely to get than shot.
Right. Well, and I'm not sure how the weather is in Ohio, but I would imagine you guys got some rough winters.
Yeah, and it gets bad.
Yeah, same thing up here. And I remember I was driving with my kids back from my kids' basketball practice, and a car flips over and does this like movie style flip in front of us. Pulled over. I've got my IFAC in the car. I've got my trauma IFAC in the car. I'm ready, able to go over there. Thankfully, like, the guy wasn't hurt at all, which was a miracle because his car was destroyed. But you're sitting there and, like, had this guy been hurt, I have the stuff able to help until somebody arrives. I don't have to just watch this guy bleed out. So that's kind of a big philosophy of it. Go ahead.
Yes, the things people don't think about, because we have, I mean, I wouldn't say we're like, doomsday preppers, but we're prepared. We have, my wife's got a freeze dryer. She runs it all the time. We have water prepped and ready. She uses one of those Mylar bags to seal stuff up, and it's good for like 25 years. And little stuff like that, over time adds up.
Absolutely. That's the thing with that, is that I think the whole doomsday prepper thing put such a bad taste in everybody's mouth about it. But that used to be super common. Again, that's a post World War II thing that we stopped doing that. And even more recent than that, that's a fall of the Soviet Union forward thing that we stopped doing that. That's a very common thing for people. And it used to be, and it still is for a lot of people around the world. And that we've just gotten so comfortable and been so protected for so long that we forgot a lot of these things. So I talked recently about how I got a canning, a thing to do canning for my birthday. And because that's one of the things I've started to get big into, is get more, prepared in that sense. And, I've got food stored up and things like that, but I want to be able to be like, hey, let's can some peaches or something, and stash those away. And that's the thing, is I think that needs to become a regular American mindset, because the biggest thing there is, like, the more you can help yourself, the less reliant on an outside force you are. Because even if it doesn't become total doomsday, shit has hit the fan, zombies are falling from the sky scenario, the world's a scary place right now. And, everyone's talking about World War III and all kinds of things. And if it, God forbid it comes to something like that, the first thing I guarantee you is that's going to happen is food rationing.
Oh, definitely. They're going to say, I mean, even not just that, but trucks are going to stop rolling. They're not going to have, people are saying, truck drivers going to stop. I got to go home and protect my family. Fuck this delivery. I'm going home.
I mean, think about any type of scenario. Like I put out a post today on my Instagram where I talked about, I recently went up and bought one of those little Mr. Buddy heaters. Um, have you ever seen those? They're like a
Those
space
are
heater
nice.
that runs on. Yeah. My buddy brought one to
Yeah,
the range and you've
we,
seen one
we
before. I
have
was like,
some.
I was like, this thing is sick. So went out and bought one. And it's one of the guys I'd interviewed before Lat 65 shooting. He's an Alaskan guy and he recommended him too. And I was like, I should probably go buy one of these. So, we were talking about like just simple things like the power going out. When you look at major cities around the country, the power goes out and like 12 hours into it, people are raiding stores. Now
Yeah.
imagine, something happens to where most people don't realize stores only have about 3 days worth of food in them. So without resupply, like even a Costco, I don't know if you guys got Costco out there, but
Oh yeah,
any
we do.
kind of, okay, I didn't know if that was like a regional thing or an everywhere thing. But yeah, so get a Costco, even a Costco for the size of people, for the size of customer base that it serves, it has about 3 days worth of supplies in it without being restocked. Most supermarkets, 3 to 5 days. So you get in a scenario where you need something more long term than that. Like again, you're talking about food rationing, gas rationing, things just not showing up places, certain things being prioritized. Where I live in a small town. I live in a town of around 8 or 9,000 people. So that's not top on the list. If they got to decide where the food trucks are going to go, they're not going to send them here. They're going to send them to the big city where
No,
there's more people. So the more you can help yourself, the less reliant you are on somebody else, and the more you can help people around you. Which I think, again, the biggest part of it is like for the most of us, the reason we own firearms, the reason that we carry, is one, to protect ourselves, but also to help people. Most of us, I would assume, and I would hope that if we were carrying a firearm and saw someone in danger or in need, would feel would feel required to step in and help,
yeah, you'd feel
and have
empathy.
the
You'd want to help.
yeah, exactly the want to help, and that applies across the board. So to me, it's one of those things that they all just go hand in hand. That it's almost like a stepping stone of leading one to the other. Um, I don't know. That's just my mentality on it.
The same here. I mean, I don't carry a gun to hurt people. I carry a gun to protect the people that I love.
Exactly, exactly. And I don't want to ever have to shoot anybody. If I can go my whole life without ever drawing my gun in
No.
self-defense, that's fantastic. That is a good time. You know, there's this whole misconception out there that like, oh, you want a gun because you want to kill people. Quite the opposite, actually. I own a firearm to make sure one that I don't get
Yeah, I
killed
want to keep
by
the
somebody.
peace with it.
Yeah, exactly. But I want to make sure that we're good. That we're protected, and I don't want to have to draw it down
Mhm.
on anybody.
No, and I don't know if people realize that when you do pull a gun and need to use it, your adrenaline is so high that I had to one time, and it ended up being nothing. But there was something outside the house that was just
Mm.
making a lot of. I mean, it's not like it was trying to get in the house. I think it was a raccoon or something. But dude, I kept having to tell myself, "Get your finger off the trigger. Get your finger off the trigger," because everything I knew, like I never touched the trigger, and
Yeah,
everything I knew went right out the window.
right. Which that's too is a great example of why people need to train and to practice with stuff, right?
Exactly.
Because even someone who does, right? Like you can have those like mental like, oh, this, I need to do this, I need to do this. And like going back to one of my earlier stories, working at the gun shop, one of the biggest things I'd see all the time, people would come in, especially like during COVID or something like that. They're freaking out for a scenario, they're reacting emotionally. They go out, they buy a gun and one box of ammo, and they never shoot it. And it just sits in the safe. And their assumption is, even if they have the mags loaded, which most of the times they don't, that when the time arises, they will grab the gun, they will load it, and they will rise to the occasion, and they will be able to Spartan kick their way through the house, and be John Wick day one. Zero training, nothing, all the stuff they've seen in the movies will just kick in, and they'll be able to do it. And they don't need training, they just need the gun itself. And meanwhile, I'm sitting there being like, I've been through a ridiculous amount of training, and you still get scenarios that are like, fuck.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I don't think people realize how loud a gun is inside of a house.
Yeah, yeah. My wife hates watching movies with me that are gun movies. Like anytime someone shoots a gun in an elevator or indoors, and I'm like, yeah, so that guy's deaf. So
Yeah, and everybody doesn't react like, oh yeah, that was just nothing. And dude, no, it is. I've heard a shotgun go off in a house before. It is stupid.
Yeah, I mean anything. Yeah, shooting indoors is loud as hell, and I don't know. That's one of my things. Is my wife hates watching gun movies with me, and so I've learned to just keep it inside. But some of them are just egregious. Some of them you're like, no fucking way.
Yeah, same here. Like that movie, Walking Tall with Dwayne Johnson. There's a guy standing outside with an AK. He's got a 30 round mag in it, and he shoots like 500 rounds through it before he reloads.
Well, like one of my things was we were watching Terminator Salvation, which is the one with Christian Bale in it, and it's one of the it was one of the new is like in the 2009 I think it was made, and they're racking a shotgun, and they think like it's one of those things that every time they pick it up they rack the shotgun, and the shotgun goes back and forth between two people in like four times between the same scene where they're trying to show each other like how to use it. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, dude, this guy's out of rounds now. He's ejected all of them.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's like little things like that you just pick up on and get to you every time. So.
Oh yeah, it bugs me too, man. My wife, it's just a movie, right? I'm like, still, they should have known that.
Yeah. That or just like, you'll see some people out there like doing the teacup grip or something like that. You're like, oh, I can't watch this. I think it just hurts to watch.
Or you have good friends that buy like crappy optics. I ended up getting one of those cheap eBay scopes like they advertise on like Facebook, like the SFT or whatever the crap it is. I put one of those on a 4570, and it has a flashlight and a laser and a red dot.
Yes.
I put it on there. It took, I can't remember exactly. I think it was like 74 rounds, and like the turret was not adjustable after that.
That's awesome.
It just kept dropping. After the first, because I was using a 4570, after the first 5 rounds, the laser quit. It died.
That's awesome. I love seeing that. See, that's one of the things we talked about last episode with my co-host was we were talking about trying to fit in with different groups of friends. Some of us have friends that are into guns. Some of it, we have friends that aren't. We gotta you have to have personality A with friend group B, and kind of switch it up a little bit. And it's the hardest thing for us is when your friends buy shitty guns and you have to not try to roast them.
Dude, I know. It's like, oh man, that's a nice Springfield XP you got there.
Yeah, you're like, you're sitting there like, we all start somewhere. Prime example, I had my father-in-law one time. My father-in-law is not a gun guy, but he knew I was a gun guy, and he wanted to get his first gun. And we went down to this gun shop in Tacoma, and he's looking around at all of them, and he picks a Springfield XD full size and 45. And I'm like, all right, man, it's your money. If that's the one you feel is best for you, sick. And so they bring it out, and it's in this hard case that's like molded, to where everything goes. And there's a space where there's a magazine, and then right above it would be a magazine, and there's a thin line in between. And that thin line is clearly where you could see they had like a mold that they just like pushed down, right, into the plastic to make that. If you can kind of visualize what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And his brain immediately goes, that looks like a scope. This must be where the scope goes. And he says this out loud, and I'm like, oh. And I'm like, I don't know this guy. I'm not with him. And we leave the store, and on their way out, they give him, as for his first gun, they give him a shot glass, and it's a shot glass with one round of 45 in it. Not like the ones where it looks like it's shooting through it. It's just like loosely in it as like a joke, right? It's a shot and a shot for like your first gun. Yeah. And I was like, sick, man. Hey, they've got a sale on ammo. Let's go get you a box. And he's like, I got the one. We're good.
Dude, I know so many people like that.
Like, what?
I got 20 rounds. Like, you got a 30 round mag though.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. For me, I've always been one of those guys where when it comes to ammo, like I like having a lot of ammo because I shoot a lot. And for me, like 1,000 rounds is like my zero. That's like my safety deposit box. Like I have like 1,000 round ammo can that I just don't touch. And like, if I have to break into that, it's like, I need to go buy ammo now.
Oh yeah, I've done 1,000 round reviews on my channel before. I mean, it's
Yeah,
you have to have ammo on tap.
yeah. That's the thing is like, especially from a preparedness standpoint, when you're like, oh, I've got 2 boxes of ammo.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. I know people are like, oh yeah, I got 100 rounds of 308, and if I only had 100 rounds of 308, I'd be freaking out.
Yeah, I have a G3, so the MP5 for men. Um, it's a basically an 18-inch barrel MP5, but in 308.
Man, those are dope.
And oh yeah, it's awesome. I love that gun. And my chest rig holds more than 1,000 rounds. I mean, it holds more than 100 rounds. So yeah, like
I
you
need
know,
to get a good 308 chest rig. I got one that'll hold 308 mags, but not real well.
so there are some good ones out there if you're willing to spend some money on them. But I went the surplus route, and so far it's working pretty good. I've got a surplus Rhodesian chest rig and a surplus Chinese chest rig.
Those look
Um,
good too.
the Chicom one, it's like a Type 63 chest rig. It's got 7 cells to it, so um, you can either run 7 mags, or I usually run 6 and throw like a radio and a tourniquet in the last one.
Nice.
And so yeah, they work really well. And the same thing with the Rhodesian one is 4, and then grenade pouches on each side, which the grenade pouches I found hold 2 Glock mags perfectly, and then the other one I usually have a radio in. So I mean that's kind of the way I've gone with that. But yeah, it's kind of hard to find some 308 stuff, unfortunately, without spending a ton of
It
money.
is. It is because I have a 308 Tavor because I shoot left-handed. So
Oh yeah,
having a gun that ejects out the left, that is freaking awesome for me.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I saw a video of you shooting that.
Yeah, I think I've done 1 or 2 videos. I think
Yeah.
I've done shorts on it and stuff. But yeah, I love IWI guns. We just picked up the new Carmel, and it has to go back because it's got a firing pin block issue. They recalled it.
Oh man, that sucks.
It does.
Well, hopefully they'll be able to get that fixed for you pretty quick.
Yeah,
Get
they
that
said
back
4 to
for you.
6 weeks, and I was like, I don't know about no 4 to 6 weeks. How about you send me a part and I'll fix it
Yeah.
myself?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, hey, you broke it. So I mean, it's like you made it broken. So
Yeah, make it
hurry up.
right without me sending it back.
Yeah, exactly. Well, man, hey, it's been great having you on here.
Oh yeah, I
It's
appreciate
been
it, man.
it's been awesome to talk to you. Like I said, but the biggest thing for me that I like seeing, and part of the reason I wanted to do this too, is I like the fact that I'm seeing more and more people step into the social media side for the pro gun people, and doing different aspects of it.
Mhm.
Uh, I always like shouting out people that on here. I like the fact that like your podcast of going around and interviewing people in the industry and different people in the gun sphere. I think that's an awesome idea, and I love seeing more and more people do that. And I think that's kind of the thing is I've seen Instagram and Spotify and like whatever platforms people are going turn from like hype lord, Giga Chad, I've got the coolest gear dudes, to a lot more like educational and information seeking platform. And
Yeah,
that's part of the reason I wanted to have this talk with you, is like, um, introduce my audience to you and vice versa. And I just really enjoy seeing more people step into this. And the more I do this, it's really awesome to have these conversations with other people. And that's part of the whole reason too, is like, we wanted to talk to normal dudes, like, I
yeah,
don't want to,
yeah,
like, it's cool having a conversation with like, Mike Glover or somebody like that might be. That's not what gets me interested, because like everyone can go check that out. He's got a whole YouTube channel for that. I want to
yeah.
know what does everybody else think? What do the real people think? And are we as for me the biggest thing has been, um, a lot of times a lot of us in the gun community, depending on where we're at, can feel so isolated where we're at and not know how to get in touch with people. I see this a lot on like the training side of things, where people doing like the find your tribe posts on Instagram kind of stuff, where they're like, hey, I want to go out and I want to go like train and do stuff in the woods, but I don't know how to do that. And it's just weird bringing that up in conversation. And then you'll be like, oh, well, I'm in Kentucky. And it's like, oh, hey, I'm in Kentucky. What part of Kentucky are you in? And the next thing you know, you got 8 dudes who are meeting up to go train. And then 2 years later, they're a tight knit group and they've been shooting for, ever since. And so that's what I've really liked to see about all of this and how this is kind of evolved and have these kind of podcasts where we can all kind of get together and, you know, just shoot the shit, swap ideas if it doesn't have to be necessarily like super topic driven. And, you know, it really just helps people, I think, feel more connected and then start making those connections with people.
Yeah, definitely. That's kind of why I wanted to start the podcast because you know I'm not a big YouTuber. I only have like 3,000 subs, about the same as what Tyler has. But I wanted to see what the other smaller channels were up to. Not, you know, I'm not really concerned about the big channels because they got their own platform. I just
Right.
wanted to, you know, do something where the normal guy has a, you know, we can talk about what we're doing on our channels and you know what drives them on their channel.
You know, and that exactly, that's one of the things that like me and Mike kind of had happened was we wanted to kind of help those who had helped us out with growing and started bringing them on, you know, and just about all of the guests I think I've had on here, they're all normal dudes. Maybe they're running Instagram, maybe YouTube, but like not super big. Some of them have grown a lot more since, or sometimes before. Um, you know, and that was the whole thing. It's just like being like, hey, there's guys out there that have really good advice. The problem is like you can't find them. You know, there's guys out there that people I think would love to hear, but they don't know how to find them because the guy's got like 800 followers. You know, but he's putting out great info. You know, it's just that the algorithm's not feeding you that because he's not, you know, 8 million subscribers.
Yeah, that happens a lot because a lot of it has to do with the like the watch hours that you have. So like if your
Mm-hmm.
video is only getting like a 30% watch, they'll stop pushing that video, which I've noticed with mine watching the analytics. But yeah.
Like when people like if people watch like the first 10 minutes and not like the last five, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, basically, yeah. Like if somebody
Okay.
stops watching after 30 seconds, the video stops getting pushed.
Got it. Got it. Okay, man. Well, hey, that's good to know for sure. So I know that's one thing we've got. We've put 10 of our videos up on YouTube, 10 of our podcast episodes. It's just that unfortunately with the technology that I have, downloading the audio from the app that I use to record on here to then turn it into a video is a huge pain in the butt. So we kind of stopped temporarily until we found something better. So,
Gotcha.
but yeah, man, it's been great to have you on here. I really appreciate you coming out. If you want to remind people where they can find you at.
Be the Punching Primers podcast and Sacrificial Science on YouTube.
Perfect. And where's the podcast at?
It is on Spotify, Amazon, Google, and Apple Music.
Perfect. Well, thanks, man. It's been awesome to have you on here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for another episode of Mid-Tier Thoughts. See you on the next one.
Yep, thanks, man. Awesome. Still there?